Well, welcome to Sophie & Co. Me, Sophie Shepard-Natze. When the UK voted out of the EU in its historic referendum, not every region supported leaving the Union. A substantial majority in Northern Ireland wants to stay in the European bloc. But now that Brexit is about to be imposed on the whole of the United Kingdom, there are already calls to unite Belfast with its EU neighbour, the Republic of Ireland. What consequences will Brexit have for the UK's unity? Well, we ask the national chairman of Sinn Féin, Declan Kearney, is my guest today.
With the UK on its way out of the European Union, the areas that voted to remain are facing an uncertain future, with Scotland reigniting talks of independence and Northern Ireland considering reuniting with the Republic. Can the pro-Irish forces convince the divided population to ditch Great Britain? Will the legacy of the violence in Northern Ireland stand in the way of unification? And does this mean Brexit will spell the end for the United Kingdom?
Declan Kearney, National Chairman of the Sinn Féin party in Ireland, member of the Northern Ireland Assembly. Welcome to the show. It's really great to have you with us. Now, after 55.8% of Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU, your Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness, said Brexit means that the UK's central government no longer represents the interests of people in Northern Ireland. But the majority of the UK voted for Brexit, and you're, of course, a part of that. I mean, that's democracy. So shouldn't this decision be respected?
What we've seen in the north of Ireland is, in fact, a subversion of democracy. The important point to remember is that Ireland is partitioned. This is contested territory. Sinn Féin's view is that there is a need to bring about national democracy and independence on the island of Ireland. And the Brexit decision was a decision arising from a referendum which should never have happened. This referendum owed more to internal divisions within the British Conservative Party than it did in relation to a meaningful discussion about the future relationship between the people of Britain and the people of Ireland and the European Union.
Now, Sinn Féin has always been sceptical towards EU membership and initiatives from Brussels. But now you've become Europhiles. Why is that? Is separation from the bloc so bad?
Sinn Féin's position has always been that there is a need for a critical engagement with the European Union. There are many matters relating to the European Union which we consider to be deeply imperfect. So our position is critical. We believe that the European Union, as it's currently made up, does not best serve the needs of citizens. There is a requirement for far-reaching reform to ensure that the European Union acts as a more democratic Europe, acts as a force for good and for global peace, and serves as a social Europe to meet the needs of workers and business people and those who are engaged economically across the European Union. And at this point in time, those requirements, the democratic, the social requirements, are not being met. So
isn't it just easier to leave the EU altogether?
Strategically speaking, Ireland's place is best served in Europe, but we cannot bring about the changes that are required by being pulled out of the European Union, and certainly not on the basis of an undemocratic decision which is being foisted upon the vast majority of people here in this region who voted to remain within the European Union.
Now, Sinn Féin has said it will push for a border poll, a referendum on uniting Ireland after Britain's decision to leave the EU. What is your plan of action?
We have said that the democratic decision of the people here in the north of Ireland should be respected and underpinned by the Irish government in the 26 counties in the south of Ireland, by the British government, and that it should also be underpinned by our regional assembly and executive. We have said to the European Union that it is important for the European Union to also recognise that the north of Ireland has a very special relationship with the European Union which must be protected. So we are arguing very strongly that there is a need for the north of Ireland's special relationship with the European Union to be retained. Our position here in the north of Ireland should continue within the European Union, and we are calling upon the Irish government in Dublin to convene an all-island forum to bring forward proposals which would guarantee the continued existence of the north of Ireland within the European Union.
Under the Good Friday peace agreement between pro-Irish and pro-British factions, Northern Ireland can initiate a poll when the public opinion favours Irish unity. But not leaving the EU and favouring Irish unity are two very different things, after all. Do you have legal grounds to push for a border poll?
Firstly, there is a legal challenge being brought forward to this decision by a cross-section of political parties here in the north of Ireland who supported the Remain position, along with progressive and democratic sections of civic society. In relation to our ongoing and our future relationship with the European Union, the Good Friday Agreement to which you referred took its inspiration from the rights which are enshrined and enjoyed as a result of the European Union's existence. The European Union has been very important in relation to benefiting and supporting the Irish peace process. So for the north of Ireland to be removed from the European Union would in fact have implications for the continued viability of the Good Friday Agreement here in the north of Ireland, and that would have implications for the political process and would be damaging towards the overall peace process in our view.
Now, the Protestant community in the majority is the majority in Northern Ireland, and Protestants tend to support the continued union with Great Britain. Aren't you afraid you'll be defeated in this poll?
There is a provision in the Good Friday Agreement in circumstances which have dramatically changed. And in our view, the Brexit decision represents a huge change in the political and the economic context here in the north. For what is known as a border poll or a unity referendum to be initiated, we believe that it is important that we examine the invoking of that provision, that a unity referendum now takes place in both parts of Ireland arising from this changed context. But it's very important that if we are moving towards a unity referendum, that there is an inclusive national conversation which takes place on the island of Ireland about what the future constitutional and economic makeup of the island should look like. And to that extent, people of a unionist persuasion have a very important contribution to make. What's important to register is that this decision has created massive uncertainty across society here in the north. Every citizen, every section of northern society, and indeed in the 26 counties, are now engaged in a fundamental re-evaluation of the status quo. We believe that in those circumstances of change, we should now initiate a discussion about the future, because quite clearly the status quo is not an option, and we have a situation arising from this Brexit decision where the continued partition of Ireland is demonstrating that it is not working in the interests of the people of this island. Brexit is the price of the partition of Ireland.
Now, a lot of people in Northern Ireland consider themselves British and would never accept a united Ireland. Are you wary of reopening old wounds with this talk of unification? I mean, can this lead to violence breaking out again?
No, I think the peace process is much too strongly embedded within Irish society. It is now irreversible. So I don't envisage a situation where any set of circumstances could lead to a resumption of armed conflict such as we've come through in the last 30 and more years. What I would say, however, is that Sinn Féin's vision of a united Ireland is one where we have maximum buy-in and support for a changed structure across the island of Ireland. Our ambition is to create an agreed united Ireland, which encompasses all traditions, all perspectives and all citizens. So we hope to see a situation evolve through an inclusive national conversation where every citizen in Ireland could now begin to rethink and reimagine what a future agreed united Ireland could look like, because the partition of Ireland has caused and perpetuated so much division and conflict in the past.
Now, I look at the Scots, and the Scottish National Party took years to prepare their referendum on independence and put together a 600-page detailed report on their secession proposal. How are you going to speed up the process of your vote to make it happen as soon as possible?
In the first instance, Brexit has brought about a dramatic change in circumstances. It has caused the re-evaluation about which I referred. And it's now incumbent upon those who have a vision for a future Ireland which would much better benefit all of our citizens to point us towards the type of discussions that we need to have about what Ireland's new economic future should look like, how we can redesign the constitutional basis of a united Ireland. I and Sinn Féin do not envisage a situation where we simply take the north of Ireland, currently under British jurisdiction, and bolt that onto the current structure of the south of Ireland. That would not be an appropriate situation. That would not serve the constitutional and the political and the economic needs of our citizens. We need a new conversation that allows us to examine new accommodations and new compromises that would ensure that we create an inclusive constitutional and political future that all of our citizens can benefit from.
Now, speaking about the consequences of Brexit, what happens now to people in Northern Ireland who live and work in Ireland and vice versa? If the labour market closes, that is essentially dividing the people of one nation, right? What happens to the ties between the two Irelands and that have developed over the years of the non-existing border?
This is one of the huge difficulties that has now been created arising from this decision, because we would face into the prospect of one part of the island of Ireland, the south of Ireland, remaining within the European Union, and the north of Ireland, currently under British jurisdiction, being pulled out of the European Union. There already is a partitioned situation on our island. There are two different jurisdictions. One of the powerful influences that has been created arising from the peace process is to accelerate all island integration, both politically and economically. One of the consequences of the Good Friday Agreement was to establish all island political institutions arising from our peace process. And all of that would be threatened as a direct consequence of this Brexit decision. It is certainly going to create further division on the island of Ireland, and we don't need to see greater division, and it is going to be a hindrance to the continued economic all-island economic integration, which we have enjoyed and developed over the course of the last period of many years. If I can say this to you, currently, on a weekly basis, there is a level of trade, north and south, in the region of 1.2 billion euros per week. And there are 200,000 jobs, directly and indirectly, across the island of Ireland, north and south, which depends upon that trade. Now, the uncertainty which has been unleashed arising from this decision means that all of that now is directly threatened. There are no clear, certain answers as to what would happen to all-island economic integration, all-island economic cooperation in these new circumstances.
All right, we're going to take a short break right now. When we're back, we'll continue talking to Declan Kearney, National Chairman of Sinn Féin, member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, to talk more about the prospects of Irish unification in the wake of UK's decision to leave the EU. Stay tuned. And we're back with Declan Kearney, National Chairman of Sinn Féin, member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, talking about the chances of two Irelands becoming one state after the Brexit vote. So the Northern Ireland set out its Brexit demands to Prime Minister Theresa May, and first they include keeping a porous border with Ireland. Do you think that the UK will be ready to negotiate an exception for Northern Ireland and Ireland? Is that going to be enough to mitigate any potential harm from leaving the EU?
Neither the British or the Irish government are in a position to negotiate the nature of the border which will be created arising from this decision. These are matters which will be taken by the European Union. But the very deep concern across Irish society is that we will in fact see a hard border reinstated between the north and the south of Ireland, and that would be hugely regressive for the political process and, as I mentioned, in relation to all-island economic cooperation. The British Prime Minister Theresa May has spoken about Brexit meaning Brexit, and that the British government intends to make a success of Brexit. What she has omitted to say is that the British government don't have a clue about what a successful Brexit is going to look like. The fact of the matter is that the British government does not have the political or the institutional capacity or memory to engage with the new circumstances that this decision is going to foist upon the British state. And it is very important to recognise that arising from all of the uncertainty and the huge change which will be unleashed, that the British state is now in an unprecedented level of political and constitutional crisis, such as has never been witnessed before.
Now, Brexit will have a huge impact on the Republic of Ireland as well. Britain is the biggest market for Irish exports, and any post-Brexit recession will automatically be felt in Ireland. Is it fair they suffer too when they couldn't even vote in the referendum?
Just today, a new report has been issued in the south of Ireland, which clearly sets out very, very stark repercussions for the economic recovery of the south of Ireland, and pointing out the very serious and challenging implications that the Brexit decision will have for the north of Ireland. It's a very small regional economy which sits on the periphery of the British state. There are many, many jobs and huge levels of investment and trade which depend upon the north of Ireland remaining in the European Union, and as a direct consequence of that, the benefits which would be denied to the south of Ireland arising from a Brexit decision. Because there is a great level of trade between north and south, enormous trade between the south of Ireland and the British state itself, and all of that is now placed in jeopardy as a direct consequence of this decision.
Now, the Irish Times reported that Prime Minister Declan Kearney believes a united Ireland is possible, saying in the same way that the wall came down for East Germany and it was absorbed into West Germany, therefore bypassing the need to apply for EU membership. Is that how you picture it, that Ireland will just absorb Northern Ireland?
Well, firstly, we are now seeing a huge shift in political opinion across the island of Ireland. There is now a greater level of discussion than ever before about the future, about the imperative of Irish reunification taking place against the backdrop of this Brexit decision, because increasingly political and civic opinion is recognising that this Brexit decision is indeed a consequence, or the price which is being paid as a result of Ireland's continued undemocratic partition. So as we see more become involved in the debate and discussion about the future of the island, constitutionally, politically and economically, then we will be looking towards models and precedents which may act as a guide or assist or a resource for us in how we take forward the national conversation about which I spoke. And the reunification of Germany, I think, is a very important contemporaneous example which we should all draw from as we focus in on that particular national discussion. However, as I said earlier, the reunification of Ireland from a republican, from a democratic point of view, is not simply a case of taking the current north of Ireland and then gluing it onto the 26 counties. We need to reimagine the future of Ireland. We need to look at what are going to be the most appropriate constitutional and economic and political models which will serve all of the people of Ireland, including the very significant unionist population which exists within the north of Ireland.
Now, the prospect of Scottish independence was met rather coolly in Brussels. Have you gauged Brussels' reaction to a possible Irish reunification?
I think you'll find in the European Union and across the board internationally that there is goodwill for the reunification of Ireland. I mean, it is a very reasonable and a very democratic option which has been consistently and historically denied the Irish people. So the European Union, I believe, contains great goodwill, not just for the peace process, but for the continued transformation of Irish society, particularly here in the north. And there is an inevitability about how we can work together, I believe, in relation to building the potential for Irish reunification and a united Ireland in the context of the European Union.
In August, the Department of Foreign Affairs in Dublin reported a sharp rise in people from Northern Ireland applying for Irish passports. They, of course, have UK ones. Is this a case of UK citizens keeping their options open?
It certainly reflects the fundamental re-evaluation that I spoke about earlier in this interview, where many citizens are looking at the uncertainties that are now being unleashed arising from this Brexit decision and recognising that Irish citizenship is a much safer and a much more logical position to adopt in the context of our fast changing international environment.
UK's Brexit Minister David Davis says Britain will work to deepen its relations with the Republic of Ireland in the wake of Brexit in order to maintain commerce and establish new business ties. Perhaps you're overreacting to Brexit, since Westminster is saying that things aren't going to become worse.
Well, on the contrary, the British Cabinet is in fact divided over what steps ought now to be taken in relation to the implementation of the Brexit decision. And that is not surprising, because the referendum should never have taken place in the first instance. It was never about the European Union. It was always about divisions within the right-wing factions within the British Conservative Party. It was always about David Cameron trying to see off the rise of narrow English nationalism posing a threat to the British Conservative Party. These were the dynamics that were at play and which led directly to the Brexit referendum. And as a consequence of the way that debate was staged within the British state, which increasingly became one about immigration, allowed for all sorts of xenophobic influences to be brought to bear. They now have a consequent decision which reflects more on a little Englander mentality than it does a state which is outward looking and seeking to engage new political and economic relationships with the global community. So the Brexit decision which the British government is going to take forward has nothing to do with outward-looking and forward-looking consideration of how the British state would engage with the international or the European community in the future. And Irish people don't want to be part of that particular agenda. So far from overreacting, I think that what I am reflecting is a very representative view shared among many sections of society on the island of Ireland as a whole. And I would say this, it is important to remember that when the majority of citizens voted in favour of remaining here in the north of Ireland, that included Republicans, nationalists, and it also importantly included citizens of a unionist perspective who recognised that our place would be much better served by remaining within the European Union, and who did not want to be led by the nose out of the European Union by a little Englander conservative perspective.
Now, obviously, you're not the only part of the UK that supports staying in the EU, Scots as well. And Scotland has already launched a second independence campaign. Will the UK survive Brexit, in your opinion?
I believe that the British state is now in an irreversible constitutional and political crisis. And I'm not in a position to gainsay what will happen in Scotland. But if indeed a new Scottish referendum is invoked, and if the people of Scotland vote to leave the British state, that will have huge repercussions for the viability and the current makeup of the British state as we know it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kearney. We were talking to Declan Kearney, member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, national chairman of Sinn Féin, about the possibility of Northern Ireland leaving the UK and uniting with the Republic of Ireland following UK's Brexit vote. That's it for this edition of Sophie & Co. I'll see you next time.